The rain came down in thin silver lines, tapping softly against the hospital windows like impatient fingers. Inside the dim corridor, Emily stood still, her coat still on, her hands trembling around her phone. A nurse walked past her without noticing. Somewhere nearby, a machine beeped in a steady rhythm. It was in this quiet, unforgiving place that the husband's hidden secret was exposed before his wife, putting their relationship at risk between blame and trust. Not with shouting, not with anger, but with a single sentence spoken too late. She stared at the door marked Records Office, her reflection faintly visible in the glass. Her eyes looked older tonight. Before the story pulls you further in, take a second with me. Where are you watching from right now? What city, what country? It still amazes me how one story can cross oceans and screens. Share your place below and let this moment connect us wherever you are. Emily finally pushed the door open. Inside, the light was harsh and white, washing color from everything it touched. A clerk sat behind the desk, flipping through files with tired hands. "Emily Carter?" the woman asked without looking up. "Yes," Emily said. Her voice sounded smaller than she felt. "I'm here about my husband, Daniel Carter." The clerk paused. Her fingers stopped mid-page. Then she looked up just a second too long. "I see," she said quietly. "Please, have a seat." That pause landed heavy in Emily's chest. Daniel had been admitted 3 nights ago after collapsing at work. Chest pain, dizziness, blurred vision. They had said stress. Overwork. Nothing serious. Daniel laughed it off from the hospital bed, squeezing Emily's hand, promising her he would finally take a break. Daniel always promised things when it was already too late. Emily sat down, her knees pressed together, her foot tapping without her noticing. She thought about the first time she met Daniel, 10 years ago at a bus stop, when he offered her his umbrella and got soaked himself. He had smiled then, wide and careless, like someone with nothing to hide. The clerk slid a folder across the desk. "There seems to be additional information in your husband's medical history," she said carefully. "Information that wasn't disclosed during intake." Emily frowned. "What do you mean?" The clerk hesitated, then spoke in a practiced tone. "Your husband has been receiving treatment for a chronic condition for over 2 years. Cardiac-related. It requires medication and regular monitoring." The room felt suddenly smaller. "That's not possible," Emily said. "I would know." The clerk's eyes softened. "Mrs. Carter, the records say otherwise." Emily opened the folder with shaking hands. Words jumped out at her. Diagnosis, medication compliance, risk factors. Dates. Appointments. Names of doctors she had never heard Daniel mention. 2 years. For 2 years, Daniel had been carrying this alone. Or hiding it. Emily left the office without remembering how she stood up. The hallway felt longer now, stretched and echoing. Her heart pounded louder than the machine's. When she reached Daniel's room, she stopped just outside the door. She could hear his voice inside, weak but familiar, joking with a nurse. Laughing. Something inside her cracked. She pushed the door open. Daniel turned his head and smiled when he saw her. "Hey," he said. "You okay? You look pale." Emily didn't answer right away. She walked closer, slowly, like each step might change something. She held up the folder. "What is this?" she asked. Daniel's smile faded. The silence between them grew thick, heavy with everything unsaid. The nurse glanced at them, sensed the shift, and quietly stepped out. Daniel swallowed. "Where did you get that? How long?" Emily asked, her voice calm in a way that scared even her. "How long were you planning to lie to me?" Daniel looked away. At the window. At the rain. Anywhere but her eyes. "I wasn't lying," he said. "I was protecting you." Emily laughed, a short, broken sound. "By deciding for me?" He tried to sit up, winced, then stopped. "I didn't want you to worry. You already carry so much." "So you let me believe you were fine?" she said. Her hands clenched. "You let me plan a future with half the truth missing." Daniel finally looked at her. His eyes were tired. Older than she remembered. "I was scared," he said softly. "And I didn't want you to see me as weak." That word, weak, hung between them. Emily felt anger rise, hot and sharp, but beneath it was something worse. Her confusion. A sense of being shut out of the person she trusted most. "You don't get to choose what I can handle," she said. "That's what marriage is." Daniel reached for her hand, but she stepped back. For the first time since they met, there was space between them that love alone could not immediately cross. Outside, the rain kept falling, steady and patient, as if waiting to see which would win, blame or trust. Emily stood there, arms wrapped around herself, as if holding her body together might stop something inside from falling apart. Daniel's hand hovered in the air where hers had been moments ago, then slowly dropped back onto the blanket. The quiet between them was louder than any argument. A nurse returned with measured steps, sensing the tension without understanding it. She adjusted the four gently, her touch careful, respectful. "He needs rest," she said softly to Emily, not as an order but as a kindness. "You both do." Emily nodded, though her throat felt tight. When the nurse left again, Emily didn't follow. She pulled a chair closer to the bed and sat, keeping a small distance, close enough to stay, far enough to protect herself. Minutes passed. The rain outside softened into a whisper. "I didn't tell you because I didn't want to become a burden," Daniel said finally. His voice was low, stripped of excuses. "My father, when he got sick, everything in our house changed. Fear ran the place. I promised myself I'd never do that to my family." Emily looked at him then. Really looked. His face was pale, the lines around his eyes deeper. This wasn't the man who forgot to take out the trash or left socks on the floor. This was a man who had been afraid, quietly, privately, for a long time. "You decided alone," she said. "And you made me a stranger to your pain." Daniel closed his eyes. "I know." That admission landed harder than denial ever could. A few hours later, as night crept in, Daniel fell asleep. His breathing evened out, shallow but steady. Emily stayed. She watched the rise and fall of his chest, the small twitch in his fingers, the way his face softened when he slept. She reached out and pulled the blanket up to his shoulders, a simple act, almost instinctive. It was the first kindness she offered him since the truth came out. If you were standing where Emily is right now, hurt, confused, yet still caring, what would you do next? Would you stay or would you walk away to protect yourself? Share your honest answer in the comments. And if this moment stirred something in you, tap like, not out of habit but to say that empathy still has a place here. The next morning brought pale sunlight and unanswered questions. Emily went home to shower and change, moving through the house like a guest. Daniel's mug still sat in the sink. His jacket hung by the door. Everything looked the same, yet nothing felt familiar. She found a prescription bottle tucked behind a row of spices in the kitchen cabinet. Another behind the books on the shelf. Evidence of a life carefully hidden in plain sight. At the hospital later that day, a doctor spoke in calm, practiced words. Manageable condition. Lifestyle changes. Stress reduction. Compliance. Emily heard the terms but felt them bounce off her chest. Daniel nodded, asked questions, played the role of the responsible patient. The role he'd been playing for years. Days passed. Conversation stayed shallow. Emily slept on the edge of the bed, awake long after Daniel drifted off. She replayed moments from their past, searching for clues, missed appointments explained away, sudden fatigue, nights when he sat quietly staring at nothing. She wondered how love could exist alongside so much silence. One evening, Daniel asked her to sit with him on the couch. The TV was off. The room glowed with the soft yellow light of a single lamp. "I wrote something," he said, holding out a folded page. His hand shook. "I didn't know how to say it out loud." Emily hesitated, then took it. The letter wasn't long. It was messy, uneven. Daniel wrote about fear, raw, unfiltered. About waking up at night convinced he wouldn't see morning. About smiling through dinners and jokes because pretending felt safer than breaking down. About loving her so much that he convinced himself silence was protection. Emily's eyes burned. When she finished, she folded the paper carefully and placed it on the table. "You took my choice away," she said. "You took my right to stand with you." Daniel nodded, tears pooling but not falling. "I know. And if you can't forgive me, I'll understand." That was the moment something shifted, not healed, not fixed, but exposed. Forgiveness didn't feel ready. Trust felt fragile. Yet beneath the hurt, Emily felt the weight of his fear, and it scared her too. She stood up, walked to the window and looked out at the quiet street below. Cars passed. Life continued. She wondered how many people were carrying secrets just as heavy. Behind her, Daniel waited, afraid to move, afraid to hope. Emily turned back toward him, opening her mouth to speak, when her phone buzzed in her hand. A message from an unfamiliar number lit up the screen. "Emily, this is Dr. Harris. There's something important about Daniel's condition you need to know, something he may not have told you." Her heart dropped. She looked from the phone to Daniel, whose eyes searched her face, unaware of what was coming next. Emily didn't answer the message right away. Her fingers tightened around the phone, the glow of the screen reflecting in her eyes. Daniel noticed the change instantly. He straightened a little, alert despite the weakness in his body. "What is it?" he asked. "Is everything okay?" Emily slid the phone into her pocket. "It's nothing," she said too quickly. "Just work." The lie tasted bitter, but she wasn't ready. Not yet. That night, sleep didn't come easily. Emily lay awake listening to Daniel's breathing beside her, slow, measured, practiced. She wondered how many nights he had listened to her breathe while hiding the fear that his might stop. The thought made her chest ache. The next morning, she stepped outside with a cup of untouched coffee and called the number back. "Emily," Dr. Harris said gently, as if he already knew how fragile she felt. "Thank you for calling." "You said there was something I should know," Emily replied. Her voice was steady, though her hands were not. There was a pause on the line. "Daniel's condition isn't new, as you've learned. But there's more. He was advised last year to consider a surgical procedure. A preventative one. He declined." Emily closed her eyes. "Why?" "He told us he couldn't afford the recovery time," the doctor said. "Not financially, emotionally. He said his wife depended on him staying strong." Emily leaned against the cold brick wall of the house. The irony burned. "Is it dangerous now?" "It increases the risk," Dr. Harris said honestly. "But what concerns me most is how long he's been carrying this alone. Stress worsens everything." When the call ended, Emily stayed there for a long moment, staring at nothing. A memory surfaced, Daniel at the kitchen table months ago, rubbing his chest absent-mindedly, brushing it off when she asked if he was okay. She had believed him. Trust came so easily back then. Inside, Daniel was washing dishes, moving carefully. He looked up when she entered, offering a small smile. "I made eggs," he said. "I might have overcooked them." Emily watched him, this man who thought love meant shielding her from pain, even if it meant risking everything. She felt anger, yes. But beneath it, something else stirred. Recognition. How many times had she hidden her own fears to keep things normal? Have you ever had someone step in for you when you felt completely alone? If yes, write yes below and share their name if you feel comfortable. Sometimes gratitude, once spoken, finds its way back to the heart that needs it most. Later that day, Emily drove alone to the hospital to speak to Dr. Harris in person. The halls felt familiar now, less threatening but heavier with truth. She listened as he explained charts and probabilities, words that sounded clinical yet carried real weight. "He's not beyond help," the doctor said. "But he needs support. Real support. Not silence." On the drive home, traffic slowed to a crawl. Emily watched pedestrians cross the street, couples holding hands, a father lifting his child onto his shoulders. Ordinary moments. Fragile ones. She realized how close she'd come to losing Daniel without ever truly knowing him. That evening, she sat beside him on the couch, the letter he'd written still folded neatly on the table. "Why didn't you tell me about the surgery?" she asked quietly. Daniel froze. The truth had caught up to him. "They said it was optional," he replied after a moment. "And risky. I thought, if I could just manage things I wouldn't need it." "Manage things?" Emily repeated. "By pretending nothing was wrong?" He nodded, shame etched across his face. "I didn't want you to see me as someone you had to take care of." Emily took a slow breath. "Daniel, loving someone doesn't mean they're weak. It means you choose them even when things get ugly." His eyes filled, but he didn't look away this time. Days turned into weeks. Daniel attended follow-ups. He rested more. Emily went with him, sitting through appointments, asking questions he once avoided. Some days were calm. Others were heavy with unspoken tension. Forgiveness didn't arrive all at once. It hovered, uncertain, waiting to be invited. One afternoon, Emily found Daniel sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor. "I'm scared," he admitted quietly. "Not of being sick. Of losing you." Emily sat beside him, close enough for their shoulders to touch. She didn't answer right away. Outside, the wind moved through the trees, carrying the sound of distant traffic. "I'm scared too," she finally said. "But I'm more scared of a life where we keep hiding from each other." Daniel reached for her hand. This time she didn't pull away. Yet even as their fingers intertwined, Emily knew something still stood between them, not just the secret but the question it left behind. Could trust be rebuilt after being quietly broken for so long? And as Daniel leaned his head against her shoulder, unaware of the full weight of the choices ahead, Emily felt it, the moment approaching when love would be tested not by fear, but by forgiveness she wasn't sure she could give. She closed her eyes, holding his hand as a decision began to form, one that would either pull them back together, or change everything forever. The decision didn't come all at once. It arrived quietly in fragments. It came when Emily watched Daniel struggle to button his shirt one morning and pretend it was nothing. It came when she caught herself reaching for her phone to text him reminders, then stopping, realizing she wanted to be there not because she had to but because she chose to. And it came late one night, when she found herself crying alone in the bathroom, not from anger anymore, but from the fear of losing him before she truly forgave him. That night, Emily sat on the edge of the bed while Daniel slept. Moonlight spilled across his face, softening the worry lines. She rested her palm on his chest, feeling the steady beat beneath her hand. Real. Fragile. Still here. The next morning she spoke. "I talked to Dr. Harris again," Emily said as they sat at the kitchen table. Steam rose from untouched cups of tea. "He thinks you should seriously reconsider the surgery." Daniel stiffened. "I know. I'll be there," she added quickly. "If you do it. Every appointment. Every hard day." Daniel looked at her, disbelief flickering in his eyes. "After everything, why?" Emily swallowed. "Because love isn't proven by hiding pain. It's proven by facing it together." He broke then. Not loudly. Just a quiet collapse into his hands. Emily moved to him without thinking, wrapping her arms around his shoulders as he cried. She held him the way she wished he had let her hold him 2 years ago. "Now it's your turn to pause for a moment. What's one small good thing you've done recently for someone else? Something quiet, something real. Share it below. Your kindness might remind someone reading this that they're not alone tonight." The surgery was scheduled for early spring. The night before, the hospital room was dim and still. Machines hummed softly, indifferent to human fear. Daniel lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Emily sat beside him, her fingers laced through his. "If something goes wrong," he began. Emily squeezed his hand. "Don't. I need to say this," he insisted. "I'm sorry for choosing fear over honesty. I'm sorry for hurting you in the name of protecting you." Emily's eyes filled, but she nodded. "And I'm sorry for the days I almost walked away instead of listening." Silence followed, gentle this time. When the doors closed and Daniel was wheeled away, Emily stayed standing long after he disappeared down the corridor. She pressed her fist to her mouth, holding herself together as the weight of it all finally settled. Hours later, Dr. Harris approached her with a tired smile. "He's out of surgery. It went well." Emily's knees nearly gave out. If that moment touched something deep inside you, leave a red heart. Some feelings don't need words, just acknowledgement. Recovery was slow. Some days were hopeful. Others were heavy. Daniel had moments of frustration, of guilt, of shame for the burden he thought he had become. Emily had moments of exhaustion, flashes of the old hurt that hadn't completely faded. One afternoon, during physical therapy, Daniel snapped at her. The room fell silent. Emily stepped outside, breathing hard, anger and pain twisting together. She could feel the old wound reopening. Daniel followed later, moving carefully. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said. "Not fully. Not yet." Emily looked at him for a long moment. "Be honest with yourself. Could you forgive after being shut out like that? Type forgive, if you could, or never, if it would be too much to bear." Emily finally spoke. "Forgiveness isn't a moment," she said. "It's a process, and I'm still in it." Daniel nodded, accepting the truth instead of fighting it. Months passed. The house slowly filled with laughter again. Softer, wiser laughter. Conversations grew deeper. There were no more hidden bottles, no more half-truths. When fear showed up, they named it. When pain resurfaced, they faced it, together. One evening, sitting on the porch as the sun dipped below the horizon, Daniel reached for Emily's hand. "I used to think being strong meant carrying everything alone," he said. "Now I know it means trusting someone enough to let them see you break." Emily rested her head on his shoulder. "And staying. If you believe love still finds a way, even after secrets, fear and pain, comment, Amen. Let hope be louder than doubt here." Years later, Emily would think back to the hospital corridor where everything almost ended. She would realize that the secret didn't destroy their marriage. Silence almost did. Truth hurt, yes. But it also opened the door to something deeper than comfort. Real partnership. And before this story lets you go, take one last moment. If it moved you, don't scroll past quietly. Tap like, not for the story but for every person who stayed kind while carrying fear. For every partner who chose honesty after hiding. One small click can be your way of saying, "I felt this, and I choose love too." Some relationships don't survive secrets. But some, when faced with truth, don't just survive. They become real.